People of the internet, welcome back to another video. It is I, Don Thomas, back in here with another one. As always, folks, the likes, the comments, the subscribes are all greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic. We're talking about Putin today, folks. Came across this article, looks like it was published not too long ago, by The Independent, where it reads, Putin urges Russian women to have 8 or more children amid soaring deaths in his Ukraine war. The article goes on to read, Vladimir Putin has urged Russian women to have 8 or more children and make large families, quote, the norm amid soaring numbers of casualties in his war against Ukraine. Russia's birth rate has been steadily falling since the 90s, and the country has suffered more than 300,000 casualties since the start of the Ukraine conflict, according to data maintained by Kyiv. In a speech via video link at the World Russian People's Council in Moscow on Tuesday, Mr. Putin said boosting the Russian population will be, quote, our goal for the coming decades. He goes on to say, quote, many of our peoples maintain the tradition of the family, where 4, 5, or more children are raised, said Mr. Putin. Recall that in Russian families, our grandmothers and great-grandmothers had both 7 and 8 children. Let us preserve and revive these traditions. Having many children, a large family, should become a norm, a way of life for all the peoples of Russia, end quote. It says here, the conference is led by the head of Russia's Orthodox Church, Patriarch Kirill, and was attended by representatives of other traditional religious organizations of Russia. Its theme was, quote, the present and future of the Russian world. The audacity, Mr. Putin. In times of war, you're asking the women of Russia to have 8 or more children? All for the sake of upholding Russian traditions, he says. Ain't that something? You know what I thought? I thought this article was pretty interesting. Of course, that's why I wanted to share it, speak on it, of course, and get your takes as well, too. I thought this article was interesting on multiple fronts. One, of course, as we already covered, it's pretty ironic that he's making such a request. Of course, it's pretty radical request. First of all, you act as if having children is something that can be done or is as easy as drinking water. It is a process, Mr. Putin, unless you've forgotten. And I also thought it was interesting, like, that's something you would never hear a U.S. president request. Presidents of past, present, or future in the United States would never ask the U.S. women population and encourage them to have 8 or more children. You'll never hear it. You'll never hear it. I feel like America would never make such a request because they feel like we already got enough going on as is. Of course, there's all these, attempts and situations in place to block immigrants from the border. And, is there enough health care and infrastructure for the people that we do have here? Yada, yada, yada. So I thought that it was just like, and then, of course, not to forget, of course, you got, people over in China where there's laws. There were laws in place, right? If I'm not mistaken, where they were requesting households to maintain childbearing to at least 1 child, 2 children max, maybe, if anything. So I thought it was interesting on multiple fronts. Another reason that I thought this was actually interesting, to be completely honest, is that, and I don't know if I've ever shared this publicly as well, too. Of course, I've had private conversations with colleagues, of course. I'm at the age right now, of course, where marriage and children, these are all things that are pretty common in my age range, right? But I feel like over the years, I've subconsciously grown into what is called an anti-natalist, right? Now, if you're unfamiliar, anti-natalism, or antinatalist, of course, is the idea, or, the ideology, of course, that people that believe that it is, inherently or ethically or morally wrong to consciously bring children into the world, knowing that the world is filled of destruction. The world is filled of evil, and the world is filled of, catastrophic events, things that are in our control, things that are outside of our control. So I do, like I said, maybe consciously or subconsciously, kind of grown to lean more on agreeance with those people and who believe those ideologies, because I too believe that it seems a bit odd to consciously bring children into a world that, to me personally, seems to be decaying. Now, people will rebuttal and say, oh, man, but there's never the right time to have children. It's always been like that, man. What are you talking about? What about your parents and your grandparents and their parents before them? Times weren't easy then either, but they still had children. You came out fine, didn't you? I always think it's interesting when people use the events of the past to validate current happenings. Oh, we always used to do that, bro. The music is always trash, man. What are you complaining about? The music was worse back then. What are you complaining about today's music? People were always having children through the Cold War and the Great Depression and slavery, man. What's the problem, man? Where is just our turn? Because things used to be done in the past doesn't validate it for it to be continue to be done in the future or in the present, whatever the case is. It's just, I don't like when people do that. That's not always going to work. You can't just say, oh, we always used to do these things, and that should be reason enough to continue doing them. So I believe, like, yeah, you might say, okay, yeah, times have always been hard. You know, it's never the perfect time to have children, this, that, and the other. But the times nowadays feel a little bit different. The times nowadays feel a little bit different, man. Again, from where I'm sitting, I'm not holding as much optimism maybe as the next man who believes that there's a bright future ahead of us in terms of the U.S. or just the world in general. I'm not seeing the sunshine and rainbows that some people may be seeing, man. It seems a bit dark. It seems as if I said this before, if we continue at the rate that the world is moving now, i.e., more wars, more misinformation in our media, more, skeptical things happening, iffy things happening. We're talking about UFOs. We're talking about advancements of AI technology and how that can maybe bring, destruction, whatever the case is. Nothing's telling me that I have the green light to go ahead and bring in children into this world. Nothing. Now, I'm not knocking you if you are, man. You could be pregnant right now as you're watching this video. No harm, no foul. Please don't think what I'm saying is me encouraging you to think what I think, do as I do. No, that's not the case. I'm simply here sharing my thoughts, sharing my perspectives from where I'm sitting, from the demographic of an African-American male, millennial, who's looking at the world right now and says, hey, man, Putin, you want to bring more children into the world? We should maybe pause the brakes real quick. You in particular, especially people in Russia, of course, being that, of course, no shade or whatever the case is. But there is an active war going on. So I find it odd that you're asking women to have 8 or more, not 1 or 2, 8 or more children in times of chaos. I'll go ahead and also say this, man. I also thought this article was interesting as well. And this is where it gets a little bit conspiracy as well, too. And of course, speaking on YouTube, you kind of want to be mindful of these things before they slap that good conspiracy theorist sticker onto you and start demonetizing your channel. I mean, my channel's not monetized and things of that nature, shadow banning, this, that, and the other. But I do believe in what is called the depopulation agenda. Look it up. There are a demographic. First, let's speak in facts for a second before we even go down that rabbit hole. It is a fact, right? This is Googleable information. The world population right now, when I last checked, when it was last surveyed, I believe is at 8 billion people, right? 8 billion humans on the planet, approximately, right? Give or take. I also believe, along with that number, that there is a demographic of people, depending on what you believe, depending on what you know. I think there are a demographic of people that think that 8 billion number is ridiculously high. And not only that, I believe that same demographic of people, right? So there's a demographic of people that believe that number is high, and okay, cool. And I think there's a demographic of people, take it a step further, who want to do something about that number being so high, right? Is that your government? Is that the man behind the curtain, right? Because I always say there's the government and then there's the government. The names and faces you don't know, you don't see. What if those are the people who are adamantly working to see that we reduce that 8 billion number? I saw something, of course, I forgot where I saw it. It was something in passing where a gentleman was speaking, and it wasn't just a regular old Joe Schmo. He was somebody of that sector. They were asking him like, yo, yeah, he agreed that 8 billion was a lie. And he also said that maybe 2 billion, 1.7, 1.8, maybe like 2 billion was the safe number, right? It was a safe number for, plenty of resources, not too much heavy, lift on the carbons and, the ethical stuff that, of course, comes with maintenance of a world or a planet, the ecosystem and, health and human resources, healthcare, this, that, and the other. He believed that 2 billion was the proper number at where we should be sitting at comfortably as a civilization, and we're at 8 billion. So my question is, what do you think the people out there who adamantly believe that 8 billion is too much, what are they doing to bring it down? What are they planning to do to get rid of that 6 billion? i.e., depopulation agenda. Now, again, I don't want to dive too deep down that rabbit hole. Of course, I would encourage you to do your research as well, too. But I do believe in that some people believe that there's too many people on this planet. I do believe people are actively working to see to it that that number gets reduced. And you start asking yourself, well, what means are they using to do so? Right? Again, I'm not going to say too many things, but in our past recent happenings in the world, things that have happened not too long ago, things that seem to be coming down the line, if I wanted to reduce a population, there's things that have been happening that seems just about right in doing so. You can take that with, grain of salt or whatever the case is. You think about it. What are some things that have been rapidly declining the rate in which humans are existing? In your opinion, I have a few that off the top of my mind. All in all, folks, what I'm trying to say is, depending whether you believe on the agenda to lower the population, whether you do or don't subscribe to the ideology of antinatalism and agreeing that there is maybe something morally or ethically wrong with consciously bringing children into this godforsaken world, whether you do agree or don't agree that Putin should uphold Russian traditions and encourage families to get back to what they used to do back in the day. Households of 7 8. And I'm not going to lie and say that large families are necessarily a bad thing, maybe in those times, of course, because, again, there was reasons for that. There was value in having a large family, right? It takes a village to raise a child, they say. Of course, family businesses, infrastructure, things of that nature. Yeah, there could be pros in having a large family. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But I just question the current times that we're in, present day today. Is that such a good idea? What are your thoughts, folks? I'd love to hear it. Down in the comment section below, let me know, man. What do you think about this? Of everything I just said. What do you think about Putin requesting the women of Russia, to have 8 or more children in the midst of war? What do you think about antinatalism? Do you agree or disagree on the idea that it might be a little bit sketchy to be bringing children into the world in the current times right now when there's no bright future from where I'm sitting in terms of longevity? And then, of course, throw in there as well, too, do you believe in a depopulation agenda, if I can even say the word? Do you believe that there are powers that be out there that do agree that 8 billion is way too many people and that we should actively be doing something to reduce that? Whether that be the food, whether that be the water, whether that be these, illnesses. What do you think is really happening out there, and what do you make of the current status of the world right now? Of course, I want to hear your thoughts, your perspectives. Share them down in the comment section down below, folks. Of course, I'd love to hear it. Again, the likes, the comments, and subscribes are all greatly appreciated. I will catch you on the next one.